Well, good morning, everybody. Just arrived last night back from...
One of them said, quote, "I can't even get my head around this. My heart is so filled with the pride of being a part of this team. I am so honored to be a part of this. To you both, thank you, and thank you to your families." Operation Midnight Hammer was the culmination of those 15 years of incredible work. The air crews, the tanker crews, the weapons crews that built the weapons, the load crews that loaded it. Before I run through this video today, I want to talk a little bit about weaponeering and what goes into an attack. Weaponeering is the science of a day that this felt like the Super Bowl, the thousands of scientists, airmen, and maintainers all coming together. One last story about people. When the crews went to work on Friday, they kissed their loved ones goodbye, not knowing when or if they'd be home. Late on Saturday night, their families became aware of what was happening. And on Sunday, when those jets returned from Whiteman, their families were there. Flags flying and tears flowing. I have chills literally talking about this. The jets rejoined into a formation of 4 airplanes followed by a formation of 3 and came up overhead Whiteman, proudly in the traffic pattern, pitching out to land right over the base and landing to the incredible cheers of their families who sacrifice and serve right alongside their family members. Like I said, there were a lot of flags and a lot of tears. One commander told me this is a moment in the lives of our families that they will never forget. That, my friends, is what America's Joint Force does. We think, we develop, we train, we rehearse, we test, we evaluate every single day. And when the call comes to deliver, we do so. I could not be more proud standing up here today of our Joint Force. I'm filled with gratitude that I get to tell their story. And as we stand here right now, our forces remain on a high state of readiness in the region, prepared to defend themselves. And one last thing, our adversaries around the world should know that there are other DTRA team members out there studying targets for the same amount of time, and will continue to do so. Thank you very much. I apologize for the length. I look forward to your questions.
I wanted to ask you, the CIA statement said, when possible, they will provide updates and information to the public for transparency, and I believe that's what we're looking for here. Do you commit to share the Defense Intelligence Agency report when it is ready, so the American people can understand more about the intelligence assessment?
Well, actually, the report that was discussed, this preliminary report, was what's called a restrike report. So it comes to us to give us an assessment whether a target would need to be restruck, right? That's the reason why. So it's based on internal feedback loop that we're supposed to have access to. Unfortunately, someone took advantage of that. But whatever is supposed to be made public will be, but whatever has to stay sensitive.
Sir, can I just jump in? You know, one of the things that I'm trying to do through this journey that we're on together, of course, transparency, but also the requirement to really protect these capabilities. I guess the time's up. So there's a balance in there, right? We do need to preserve options should the nation and the Joint Force be tasked to go do something again. So I'm confident we'll find the middle ground, but there are some things that if asked, I'd want to not release related to.
So we're going to leave it right there. I want to thank the heroism of our men and women in the military. What they accomplished is truly historic. Setting back the Iranian nuclear program, untold number of years. It was a devastating attack. We appreciate you covering it. Thank you very much,
yes, sir.
Chairman. Thank you.